Benji, welcome to the podcast, brother.
Thanks for having me on, dude. It's a pleasure. I was going to say this to you before, it seems weird, like connecting with you a couple of weeks ago to now being in the UK.
Well, mate, it was because we caught up. We originally met on the Gold Coast, went for a run with one of the great men, Griffin.
Indeed.
And he was saying, oh yeah, like our mate Benji's, he's off to, he's going back home to the UK. And I was like, oh, wow, I'm going to the UK in a little bit. Yeah. So I'm pumped that we're here in Manchester. We're doing it here now. Yeah. How you feeling? We had a beautiful little session.
Good, dude. Yeah, I was just saying, I'm filled with caffeine, testosterone, and probably too much coffee at the moment.
Yeah.
It's all the ingredients to a beautiful morning.
And bro, you're looking jacked as well. We had a little bicep, tricep.
You can turn up looking 10% bigger. That's always the goal, mate, with the morning routine.
Mate, I love that. And to be honest, I love doing that kind of stuff with a guest before a podcast. Like whether it's like a coffee or a swim or like a gym session's preferred because it's such a great way to like just knock around at the start. Like I remember saying in the car on the way here, like I know a lot of podcasters who like just won't even talk to their guests. They'll meet in the studio so they don't like waste the conversation. Whereas I'm like, nah, I want to knock around with my mates beforehand. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because you did something similar with your podcast, right?
Yeah, I think some of the ones that we did by default meant that we couldn't, because the way that we would often record would be doing like 3 episodes back to back.
Really?
Yeah. So we'd lock in for London for a day and we'd bang 3 episodes out.
Wow.
So it was almost like an appointment schedule, mate. Like one would roll out, we'd take a quick break and then roll into another one.
Yeah.
Which is, you don't realize how exhausting it is, because like the mental fatigue of just being focused and really listening to someone takes it out of you.
How long were your episodes that you were doing it?
Depends. Like the longest episode I think we ever did was like 3.5 hours.
Hey.
But I think it depends on the guest, because sometimes you can drag episodes out, and it's just a marathon of bullshit.
Yeah.
Some people it's worth doing them with.
But then I look at like one of your friends, Chris Williamson, who did like a podcast with Naval recently, and they would go for like 2-3 hours, and it's like I'm hooked the whole time. Like Rogan's really good. I remember one of the boys, they were talking about like it's called like podcast fatigue. Like you almost like you have to build up your stamina to be able to have a conversation for that long. Like our episodes typically go for maybe an hour and a half, which is nice. Like I think that's a nice time frame, still consumable. But those like 3-hour episodes, like man, that takes time.
Yeah, dude. I think with those as well, you have to chunk them up, don't you, into sections, unless you're going out and doing a long run.
Yeah.
I don't mind listening to something like that then as well.
100%. Bro, I'm actually like, I'm super pumped to do this conversation today, because like, even like we obviously connected a couple of weeks ago initially, but then like after like listening to other podcasts you've done, speaking to you on the phone, I'm like, there's so many similarities between our stories. Like you studied psychology, I'm studying psychology, all the stuff you've done with Movember, you're in the fitness space, like you've done a podcast. I feel like I'm just starting doing this podcast. So it's like, bro, there's so many similarities, and I was just like, man, I can't wait just to sit down and like knock it out for an hour. It's so cool.
It's strange the way things that happen though, isn't the way that the universe puts people together. Like you cross these paths with people, and like even me and you were talking about, you know, the men's mental health space, and then potentially doing something in Oz. It's beautiful just the way that those journeys like align sometimes for you to then make these connections, and then you don't know where they're going to lead to and what projects you may end up working on collectively as well.
Yeah, bro. How was your time in Australia?
Loved it, dude.
You loved it, yeah. What'd you do? Like a little 2-week stint?
It was supposed to be a 2-week stint. I came over to the Gold Coast on Boxing Day. I'd booked 2 weeks in, and I was supposed to go back, and I extended for another 3 weeks. And then my friend Hunter called me and he's like, dude, I'll come over and train. And I ended up putting like another 2 months. I maxed out my holiday visa and just did 3 months. And the only reason I left was because I was getting kicked out of the country.
What is it about Oz? Like, why were you so excited to get over there?
I think it was just that period in my life. I was going through a big transition, and being around the same people and old habits just didn't allow me to escape that chapter of my life. So I know there's this kind of, what would you call it, viewpoint from the UK or even from Oz of people will, you know, people fail their journey or the path in the UK, so they'll bunk over to Oz to try and refine themselves, so to speak. But mate, for me, it was the biggest game changer of all. Just being able to go over in a new environment, sun, a bit of a change in the way that people work, and be able to just kind of focus on myself for a little bit.
Yeah, but why Australia? Because I mean, like, I'm sure you could have done that anywhere in the world, right?
I've been to Oz in 2019 as well.
Yeah.
And I just loved being there. I loved the way of life. I enjoyed the people who were there. the weather obviously plays a huge part, especially when you're into fitness and stuff as well.
Yeah.
For it to be able to go running along the coast, it's different to the UK or being on a treadmill. You get that optic flow where it's just change.
And bro, it looks good on you, man. Like when we went for a run along Burley during the morning, I was like, this guy's definitely coming back over, you know. I was like, man, it looks so good on you, brother. I was like, I'll see you in a couple of months.
Yeah, it was a great place to be, dude. And I think one of the biggest things I took away from being there was, and you'll probably notice it a lot when you go down to London tomorrow, is, and this is a sweeping generalization, but you'll notice people talking a lot about work and what they're going to do in work. What I really noticed was when I was in coffee shops and stuff and spent a lot of time there was people were talking with people around what they're doing with the time outside of work.
Yeah, I
like
love
a
that.
lot of people, and I was included in that bracket of I was working to live and not just living.
Yeah.
I always thought I need to put in so many hours to be able to enjoy myself first, and that was a barrier.
Yeah.
And I think that was definitely a cultural difference that I noticed between, I mean, especially on the Goldie, compared to the big cities like Manchester and London. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it, especially when I needed to pull myself out and get more work-life balance.
The work-life balance is an interesting piece, and I do know what you mean, especially on the Gold Coast. And like maybe it's just the circles that we're knocking around in, and you were knocking around when you were there. But it's like a lot of the crew, like they have an emphasis on well-being, like whether that being like prioritizing their sleep, training 100%. Like you're up at 5 a.m. and Burley Beachfront is packed with crew running, right? And there is such an emphasis on it. And so it's interesting, like that work-life balance, because obviously I think we're similar in the sense where we like to work. Like it's something that, I don't know, for me personally, like I enjoy doing it, but then I also love training. And even now I'm starting to think about like, how do I structure my day in order to maximize that stuff? Like I was telling you before in the car, like I need sleep. Like if I don't have I've been operating on like 6 hours of sleep recently, but optimal is 8 or 9 for me. And I used to always do that when I was playing pro footy. And it wasn't until recently where work comes into it. You know, you have a relationship, you're training for a marathon, you got all this study, you got all these things. And like, well, how do I fit everything into one day? And I think about that all the time. It's like, well, why do we need to get up at 4 a.m? Like, why can't we just train at like midday or something like that? I think about that all the time.
I think we get sold a dream, especially around morning routines of the things that you need to do. But a lot of the time, and I was thinking about this when I was in Australia, is how much fluff do we include in our day, you know, before we actually start the thing or do the thing. And I get sometimes, like we were talking before, we were speaking about, you know, what do you do before the podcast? And the thing that you do is fairly simple. It probably doesn't take that much time, but you know, you watch a lot of creators online, there's these hours morning routine, and it's like, how much of that stuff is just procrastination? Because if you just did the thing, you'd be less stressed than doing all this stuff before it and the build up to it. Like people used to operate on a bacon butty and a black coffee in the morning and crack on with work, and they didn't do too badly from it.
Coffee and a cigarette.
Exactly.
They were into it,
And I think we sometimes over-optimize stuff, which just takes so much time out of your day, where you'd probably be better just having an extra hour sleep.
But do you think that's just because it's so talked about so often? Like,
I think it's sexy.
Yeah, fuck 100%, man. Like even like people see it online and they probably look at these guys and girls who seem to be super successful, and they're like, oh, well, they're doing the ice bath the first thing in the morning, and they've got their meditation, their journal, and all this stuff. And don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking it, because I think a lot of the stuff is great. But how much of it is fluff? Like, you know what I mean?
Mate, you look at the pinnacle of it at the moment, that Ashton dude is blowing up all over Instagram. The guy who was dunking he's the guy who was taking the bowl and pouring bottled water into it, and it's like 5 a.m. do this. And I think, you know, you've got to take people like that with a pinch of salt.
Yeah.
Because I think it's very easy, like in the space that we work in, to be pulled into all these things that we then deem as normal. I was speaking about this the other day, because, you know, having 5 pairs of trainers that you cycle through for a running prep isn't normal. Having 55 pairs of shorts and a walk-in wardrobe isn't normal. Being able to run 4 kilometers back to back to back to back isn't normal. Being able to run a high rocks in under 60 minutes isn't normal. But I'm not saying it's not possible, but then the standards in which we set for ourselves based on them individuals that we're around, it makes us feel inferior, because we see a lot of these people. We don't see all the people who are, I guess, below that metric stick, who are getting the average times.
And I think about that, you could apply that concept to anything, right? Like a marathon, or like running for a marathon, high rocks, people doing sub 60, or even like people who are doing podcasting and content, where you see maybe a couple people's clips that are like really 10 out of 10 clips in terms of like being cinematic and well structured and like just well shot. Whereas like a phone piece to camera might just be just as efficient in terms of like, if your goal is to, have impact and passion and potentially get engagement and views, it's like, you don't need to operate at a 10, 100% of the time. You can also operate at like a 3 or 4 in terms of like output and capacity.
I think that's a big thing now. And I mean, that's where I guess you bring a lot of value as well is, and I was thinking about this and speaking about this, was in creating content, thinking about depth rather than width. A lot of people now are going after the viral views and what's going to get the most. But if you can just help 1 or 2 individuals and hit them with depth and something that's going to impact their life for a long period of time, it's probably going to connect with more than 1 or 2 people, even if the goal is only for it to resonate with those people.
Bro, I remember you said that to me the other day, and I really just sunk in, and I was like, fuck, I love that. And I think about even when you were doing like your podcast, like what's the goal? Like, why was it a way to like build relationships with other people, or was it like a host of things of why you wanted to start it?
I think when we first started it, and for like people who are doing coaching or PT, and I think this is a good reason to start. It was a lot of things that we were doing was just addressing questions that we were getting off a lot of clients. So it was a way for us to kind of combine a load of stuff and put out a podcast. And even if only our clients listened to it, it addressed all our issues, which were probably widespread. If a lot of your clients have got those questions, there's probably a lot of other people asking them as well. So that's where it really started, was just to address commonalities in the fitness space. And then it kind of grew from there in terms of connections and people we knew and having interesting conversations in the health and wellness space. And then I guess then for me, it became a short form of therapy as well. Just being able to talk and chat with people. I think especially through COVID, where we lost so much of that human interaction, I valued it more than ever before.
I love the piece of having something, because like obviously there's so many people who are starting a podcast these days, right? And if you have something that's a little bit more in depth, of aligned with your own values and what you want to do, like especially around like helping your clients, and even like more so like helping like therapy for you, like a talking therapy, I think that will go so much further. And the longevity podcast, like you did for 4 years, you know what I mean? I had a conversation with another guy who started a podcast like 6 years ago, and they're still going. He's just like, mate, I do this because I love this. I do this for the conversations, the relationship piece. And even for me personally, like I'm similar, like I am on this journey of like trying to figure it out, like it's like selfishly. So talking to guys like yourself and taking little learnings, but then also like the relationship piece, like meeting just incredible people like yourself. Like we had a round like a month ago, now we're doing a session, now we're sitting down for a podcast. Like that's such a cool thing. And then, so if you think about it, like if people are just like, oh, I'm just going to start a podcast because I might make some money from it, it's like, respectfully, you're probably not going to, like, podcasting is a tough gig. Like, you're not going to commercialize it straight away. Like, I think the stats, I forgot the stats, but it was something like, it was like if you do more than 20 episodes, you're like in the top 90% of like longevity. Or it was something
I think it's that, yeah, I think there's like a 12 episode marker where it's like 70% have dropped off, and then of those 90% drop off after episode 21.
Crazy. How many episodes do you do?
A couple of hundred episodes.
Bro, see, insane. You know what I mean? We were even talking about your friend Chris this morning at the Chris Williams, who you know, he's been doing his podcast for ages, and he was doing like 3 episodes a week for 5 years, and people are like, oh, this guy's like an overnight success. Like we just started to hear about him in Australia. It's like, nah, he's been grinding out for years. You know what I mean? Which I have so much respect for.
People only see the tip of the iceberg. They don't see all those episodes that have gone in previous to that. And I think even when he was starting as well, which is a little bit different now because we get the clips, there wasn't a feed which would push you out. You had to just generate it by word of mouth and have a good value to the podcast that it was offering.
Yeah.
I think, like you were saying, a lot of people get into it either for money or they think it's going to be a quick success.
Yeah.
And they're just focused on the visuals, how good it looks, the quality.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can polish its head. Like, you need to be having good conversations and value adding for people to stay hooked and listen, because I think the average person only listens to 3 podcasts.
Really?
Yeah, like as in 3 people. So for you to hustle in on one of those spots is big.
Yeah. Who would be your 3?
My most viewed at the moment are probably Chris Williamson's. I've always listened to his because I've known him before he started doing the podcast. I dip in and out of Rogan depending on guests. And then I was listening to Stephen for a little bit, but I've really gone off Stevens a little bit over the past
Yeah.
year or so. I sometimes listen to my friend Hunter's just because his or do you know what? Some people probably won't wonder why you listen to that, but sometimes I listen to Nelk.
Who's Nelk?
This group from America, like proper, like fuckboys kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, really.
But it's like
so left field, man.
Yeah, dude. I listen to so much self-development now. Sometimes I just need to listen to boys just talking shit. So that kind of makes me switch off and just always being like sleep, optimal, train. Do you know what I mean? So something a little bit different.
We kind of alluded to it before, how like we get stuck into like all the fluff of our morning routine. Do you reckon we can get like stuck into like too much self-development?
So this is the thing that I'm exploring with the project that I'm going to move into next, is just that balance between being content and self-development, because obviously whenever you're chasing self-development, you lose being content with your current situation. You can't be content and be self-development at the same time. They just don't go hand in hand. So I think there's going to be points probably in your life where you are optimizing for self-development and you're not content with where you are, which is fine, but then you need to try and find that through forms of gratitude or things that you've done. And I think a lot of time we're so busy looking up the ladder that we forget to take a look over the shoulder every now and again of how far we've come. So I think doing and practicing things like that is difficult, but I don't think there's any way or anyone knows how to truly balance the two.
Yeah, it's like it'd be purely an individual thing, because I think we're probably very similar in that sense, where it's just like probably like both ambitious guys.
Yeah.
But everyone talks about how important it is to be present and be grateful for what we have. It's like that if and then model, like if I have that thing, then I'll be happy. Like if I have that house, then I'll be happy. If I get that car, then I'll be happy. Where it's just like, enjoy the journey. Like
I was one of those people who got so stuck in that cycle.
Yeah.
I thought the house was going to bring me happiness.
Yeah.
I thought the car was going to bring me happiness. I thought the money was going to bring me happiness. I thought the things were going to bring me happiness. And I think where I found most happiness is when I've been through something and I can then offer the value or the things I've learned to other people.
Yeah.
I think whenever you have a bigger purpose rather than things that are materialistic, and you can not always be selfless. Obviously, sometimes you gotta be selfish first, but I think you always get value in being selfless, and especially helping other people. It lights you up in a different way, which I think is even why when people make money, they look to give to charities or they love to do charitable things. It just, even that, I guess, is selfish in a way, because you're still getting something back from it.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but when did you start to feel like that ambitious side was coming out? Was it during high school? Was it post high school? Like, have you always had it? Like, where does that come from? Like, where does it start?
I guess I've always been a little bit entrepreneurial. Even when I was in high school, I started by going to, there's a shop, I don't even think it even exists anymore. It was like a home and bargain, like a cheap shop. And I'd go and buy, what are the sweets called? It was the ones that always come out at Christmas. There's like a little gold foil and like hazelnut.
For Ferrero Rochers.
Ferrero Rochers.
Wow, it's beautiful, joggy.
They were beautiful. They were probably too beautiful for 14-year-old boys in high school. But I'd go and buy a pack and I'd sell each one for 20p in the playground.
Gotcha.
And then I'd get a bit of a profit, and then I'd go back, buy another box, and I'd go back into school the next day. But then I kind of got a bit greedy with profit, and I'd start stealing the tubs. Because I was like, right, here's my profit margins are now way bigger because I'm not tubs. But then I realised I couldn't steal them every day because I get caught. So some days I'd buy them, some days I'd steal them, and my profits would still be up.
That's so wild.
That was my little entrepreneurial set point until I got caught by the school, not by the shop.
Yeah, gotcha.
So that was like where I guess that kind of the entrepreneurial gene kicked in.
But then do you think that, like, having gone through, because I'm keen to talk about like building business and what it takes to build business, just from like a personal point of view, but do you feel like you needed to go through all the like smaller entrepreneurial stuff to, building your brands and building your online platforms and your social media and everything like that in order to get where you are now, where you are conscious of the fact that, no, like I want to be grateful, and having those things, like it isn't it?
I'm sure it was, to be fair, Stephen who spoke about this, and he got a little bit of backlash about it, and he said that, I think, is it £70,000 is anything you earn over that, it's unbalanced happiness that comes from it. Like that's the set point in which you can live a good life.
You don't get any more happiness after that.
Yeah, you lose bang for your buck, basically.
Yeah.
I think that was a set point, and people are like, oh, it's easy for you to say, and he's like, yeah, it is easy for me to say, but it would take somebody who's done it, lived there and been it, to then be able to give the story and tell the experiences. And I think it's the same thing with things that you go through in life, is that sometimes you need to walk the walk to be able to talk the talk.
Yeah.
And it's the same stuff, dude, even with the, like, I've been through a big life change in the last 6 months, and even that stuff is going to help me then with helping other guys or helping other people. I think one of our biggest wins or biggest values is the pain that we've carried, and the stories you can then tell from it, because you can help other people with it. So I think from a business perspective, it's definitely helped me, because you want to learn fast so that you don't fail next time. So it's definitely brought me value, both for myself and then to other people I've worked with.
What do you think the cost is of all that excessive growth?
I think it's difficult depending on where you're up to in your life. I think if you're in your 20s and 30s, like, you can hustle for a couple of years, mess it up a few times, and still be fine. Like, I've messed things up. I think being open to just messing things up is gonna launch you a lot further into success, rather than this perfectionism thing. I think done is better than perfect. And obviously, don't get me wrong, you need to take value in the way that you show up in your work, but I think so many people nowadays are just trying to get things perfect first time, rather than just showing up and doing shit and getting stuff wrong. That's where I've learned the most lessons, is just from making the mistakes. And then a cheat code to that is then being willing and open enough just to ask stupid questions over and over and over again.
I love that, man. I read this book maybe like 2 years ago. It was called How Much Is Enough? I forgot who it was. It was like this really great book. And essentially, like, you ask yourself a list of questions of like what you'd love your life to be like, and that can change and that can evolve over time. But essentially, you kind of put like a number figure on what the life would look like. Do you want to go on a holiday with your family every year? Do you need to, you want to put your kids through college? Like, it was like all these like little, you put like a figure on it. And then, so essentially, like, once you hit that figure, don't get me wrong, if you want to progress and grow, of course, but no more amount of money is going to make you any more happier, because you're doing all the things that you love to do. Like, if you, and that is not just from a financial point of view, it's also from a time point of view. Like, I know Griffin talks about it all the time. It's just like, people define success through like money, right? But what about success through your health? Success through time, success through all these other I guess like other values that's not just financial. And when he said that on the podcast that we did together, I was just like, man, I was like, first of all, you're so much wiser, because he's like 22 years old, right?
It's crazy.
Right, he's got an old head on his shoulders. It's so impressive. But when he said that, I was like, mate, I actually love that. And it kind of ties into what we were talking about before, where it's just like structuring days. Like, what do we want to be doing in that day? Who do we want to be surrounding ourselves with? When he said that, I was like, oh, that's so profound.
Because I think with those materialistic things, you just keep kicking the can further down the road, don't you? Even when I did it all the time. Like, I remember when I moved into my new house, I was then looking at the next house we were going to move into, or the bigger house down the road. And then even when I bought my car, I was like, oh, imagine when I can afford the Ferrari or Lamborghini. And then we'd go on like perfect holidays, and, we'd travel through the airport, and we'd get to the hotel, and we'd get to buy the pool, and then I get to the pool and be thinking, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we did this next year? Like, I'm always thinking about ahead rather than being present in the moment. I think it's so, when you're on that self-development journey, it's so easy to continue to just that trajectory up, especially when it's being validated as well, instead of just being able to stop and then leveling out and having that chapter of being content for a bit.
How do you think is there anything that you do to help find the balance between that? Because obviously it's like, it's being present, it's enjoying the journey, it's doing the things, but then there's also the time where you just need to like dig deep and and grind and build the thing, so you can get to that point where you are in a good spot. And thoughts around that?
I think I spoke about this on Chris's podcast, because I don't think that chapter of the journey is spoke about too much, because most people probably aren't documenting it a huge amount, because when you're sat in the shitty office and things aren't sexy, and you're operating on low budgets and things are super stressful, and I remember turning up into the offices and stuff, and I was on my own for hours and hours and hours and hours, and I didn't even have enough money to get like proper food. I was just cooking on energy drinks and up late nights and working weekends, and it wasn't sexy at all. And you've got to ride that bit out, because that's where most people will drop off, like we said in the podcast, because that's the most difficult part of it. I think you get by a lot of stuff by just not quitting. Like, if you don't quit, you'll always win.
What were your businesses that you were running for the last however many years? Like, what were your two big businesses that you were focusing on?
I was running a fitness app called MyCoach, which I'm still involved in. That started though as a coaching business, so I was kind of quite early to the coaching scene, and I essentially started like one-to-one coaching, but just scaled it very quickly because I worked at the marketing agency when Facebook ads were actually good, and you could just scale the shit out of them. Dude, I remember the first weekend I'd put like £100 on an ad, and I had 120 leads I was on the phone with, and I was just selling like hotcakes to them. And then I was also running a clothing business at the same time, and we scaled that quite quickly as well. There's quite a few guys that know, if you know, from the UK, like a dude who did a podcast with Ollie was on it. Ross Edgley was on it. A guy called Zach George was on it. Chris Williamson was on it. We had quite a few dudes on it. So they were the two businesses that we were operating for a couple of years. Scaled them, and then I tend more to the coaching side of things. That's where my passion was. And then just lent into that, and then obviously at the same time, then the things that surrounded that were the podcast and the YouTube channels and social media and stuff.
What do you think the driving force is to, I guess, have these successful businesses? Like what, like, because obviously it's a common thing. Like there are a lot of people who, you know, want to have a successful business. They want to have this life. Like, what's the driving force behind that?
I think you've got to have a passion for it.
Yeah.
My passion was always helping people, which is why I worked for the police for a couple of years. But then the reason I was put off is because people told me not to make my hobby my career.
Yeah, run me through that.
And then I think that was doubled down on when my dad said to me, you know, you're never going to make any money from running around like a dickhead with your eyes shut in the gym. And I was like, yeah, told you, Dad. So I think that's like flipped on its head now. I think if you can make a hobby a career, like you're going to enjoy doing it. And that's what will keep you doing it as well, because you keep showing up and doing it. So I think that's such a big one first, is there's got to be a bigger meaning than money. Because you'll never like, there's loads of things that make you money. There's things that are going to make you more money than what your hobby will do. But it's, you've got to live every day, and you've got to enjoy showing up every day.
Yeah, that's, I think that's such an interesting piece. And if you are doing something that you love, you're probably going to put like 10 times as more effort into it because it's something you love. Like I look at a lot of mates who, like, my day job at the moment is I work for like the Rugby League Players Association, so professional NRL back in Australia. That's probably like one of our biggest sports. And so I used to play, and now I help guys like transition out of that game, because when you transition out, it's, you know, there's a few things that can be tricky, whether it's from like an income point of view, employment point of view, or even just like a being around your friends, like a connection piece, right? And so a lot of those guys, like, naturally income drops, so they have to go out into the mines, or they have to bring in the amount of money that they were used to or accustomed to before. And a lot of the time it's like, yeah, sometimes you do have to put food on the table. Like, I'm not knocking that at all, but when you can live in, like, if you can like do what you love and like make money from it, you're gonna transition so much better out of sport, but also do something you love, and you'll have like so much more energy around it. And you know what, bro, like when I have these conversations with these guys, like, and talking about them, like what they love and what they're doing for work, those guys who like sit up in their chair a little bit more, and they have a fucking like a heap of energy, and with the way they talk about it, like, it's infectious, bro. I honestly reckon. And even talking to you about like your stuff and what's coming up, it's just like, you can tell that there's like a cool energy behind it. And like, I don't know, it's even everything you've said before just seems like you've always done that.
I think that's a difficult one, is when you're transitioning maybe from a different career, or you're thinking about whether to go all in on it. I think one thing I've learned is you've got to be careful with the advice that you give to people, because everyone's in different situations. And the thing that I did was I tried to create a bit of a safety net first, that there was a crossover, but at the same time, I think having that safety net pulled away makes you have to go out and earn the bread. Like, it's like when you got to when you're hungry, do you know what I mean? You've got to go and find the food, or you don't eat.
You mean like safety net in terms of like a financial piece, just in something to fall back on?
But, and then I guess the same time is, you got to think about pain. If you're in a position or a job where you really don't enjoy, or you're stressed, or you're anxious, and you're showing up every single day, and even if it's earning you money, you're miserable. You've got to think, and I can't remember what the term for it is, but there's like a ceiling to where some people, unfortunately, will live just below where that pain threshold is. And they'll never be in an environment where it's hard enough to push them over, where they would have made the change. So they constantly live below that barrier, and it's just a shit life. Sometimes you're better being in awful pain kind of like what I've just been through, which made me change everything.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just live below that threshold and you just sit in it for years and years and years. And it happens with careers, with relationships, with lifestyle.
Do you think it's an awareness piece? Like my first thought is just like, how do we get into that and how do we recognize that we are in it? Because if it is comfortable and you're like, oh, you know, like my boss is a bit of a dick, but he's not that bad. Or like, I am getting like good income. I feel very safe, but you know, it's not the worst. Like, is it awareness piece? Like, how do you, like, what advice have you received or what advice would you give? And I know you're careful with giving advice, is like to take that next jump. Like, what would help to take that next jump?
Yeah, the reason why I'm careful about giving advice, and this is a big thing for me, is because I've been surrounded by it, especially the last couple of months, is you got to think about the person that's giving you the advice. Would they live it themselves?
Yeah.
Because it's so easy for people to give away throwaway comments and go back into their own life and live and carry on. They don't have to deal with the consequences that are going to come of those words that they've given. So I think when you're going through those periods, it's got to come from someone who you trust or value. Like, I can get advice off of mum all the time, but she doesn't have a clue what I'm doing or what I'm going through.
Love mum.
Yeah, it comes from a good place and a good heart.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not where I'm going through because she's never been involved in business, but it's coming from a good place. So I think probably speaking to people who have been through situations, if you're lucky enough to know those types of individuals. But at the same time, dude, like if you're listening to this and you're in your 20s or in your 30s, you could probably spend the next 2 years of just fucking up and then still be able to go back to the job that you've been in.
Yeah.
And then at least you've got the story to tell, at least you've got the experience, at least you've itched the scratch and you've gone and done it, and then you can go back to the other life.
But it's still so nerve-wracking, bro. Like, it's like when you've got everything's comfortable, you're like, I'm like earning good money, you know, I like, even if you like your job, but if there's another passion, like even for this, right? Like, I love my job, helping players transition out. Like, a big part of like studying psychology and starting this podcast and even working at my full time was to be able to help mates and family who might be in a dark place, but then also who are transitioning out of professional sport. So I love that. But then the amount of impact that we can have on this podcast is like, it's incredible. And I feel like, and my work know that, like, that this is going to be the long-term goal, and I want to be able to do this and travel around to the UK and around the world to have these conversations with friends, but also incredible people, right? So it's like, for me, it's like, when do you take that jump? Like when do you do that? Because financially in a nice spot, but it's still that little nerve-wracking. It was like, oh, do I just set aside a certain amount of cash? But you know what I mean? There is that little bit of uncertainty to take that jump.
I think a lot of the time if something big hasn't happened in your life and you're stressed and you're anxious, it's usually because you're aimless and you're hopeless.
Yeah.
So you need to find a goal, like a big goal for you to go after.
Yeah.
And then you need to find something that gives you hope. And even if it's delusional optimism that you find, like, that's still good. That still fires you up.
Yeah.
So I think you probably need to set a new goal for you to go at if you are looking to go into something new, so that you can go after it and you can push yourself into it. Just kind of having a whimsical, you know, being a deer in the headlight and thinking, oh, I'm just going to go into it and see what happens. I think you need to set targets with it. You need to set goals with it, and you probably need to set time frames with it. That'll take away a lot of that stress and anxiety. Even for me, with going through a load of change, I felt stressed and anxious, and then as soon as I thought to myself, I haven't really got anything at the moment that I'm really going at or anything to gear towards, that gave me purpose again. Especially those guys, the two biggest things that we need is to, one, have purpose, and two, not feel like a burden. So as soon as I had those things again, I was like, right, I can look in again. It gave me hope, and then I was, you know, fine. Then looking for evidence, because once I had the evidence of being like, yeah, this is it, it then gave me confidence to continue to push forward.
I think the evidence piece is a big one, because like, even like I related to where I'm at personally now, because it's like, I know what I want this thing to be, and I've got like, I feel like I've got parts of the evidence there, but it's still that little unknown. And sometimes you just need like a kick in the ass and be like, mate, you can do it, just go do it. And also like surrounding yourself with the people would be super important, right? Like, even the way where you're at in your life at the moment, it's just like, you said you want to come back over to Australia because everyone's kind of knocking around in a similar environment. Like, that's got to be a really refreshing piece to be like, okay, this is what I want to do. I've got the crew around me, like, let's go.
I think, to be fair, mate, you probably just touched on one of the big elements of why I enjoyed Australia so much, is because I felt less lonely.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, I think there's going to be an element, and again, Hormozy talks about this a lot. I think even Chris has spoke about the lonely chapter quite a bit, in terms of when you're changing careers or whether you're changing relationships, there's going to be a period in which when you're trying to elevate yourself, you're going to naturally cut yourself off from a lot of people. Whenever you're doing something that's maybe deemed as, extraordinary, that means different. So you're not going to be like a lot of other people who are in your circle at the moment, which means you're probably going to need to change circles at some point. It'll naturally happen, and it's going to be a lonely place until you do that. So for me, like, I've got some great friends, like friends I've been friends with for years, and I love them to death. But a lot of them are working 9 to 5s, and I don't work a 9 to 5. So the total social interactions that I get through the week aren't huge, because I'm up, I train, I work, and then a lot of them have got families and stuff, so they haven't got the time to then do things. Whereas when I was in Oz, people were doing similar things to me. They're on a similar schedule, so we could, even with work, we could link up and do work at the same time. Train together, socialize together. So I really enjoyed being around people who are probably on a similar time frame to me. Like we were speaking about, a lot of the friendships that we make is because the schedules are the same, school, work, and they're forced. So we have to make friends with those kinds of people.
Bro, I remember when you were in Australia, it was like you, Chris, Ollie Moore, like I think Hunter might have been there. Shirts off, sun's out, boys are looking jacked. I was just like, bro, I got to lose a couple of weight. I got to lose a couple of kilos before rolling in with this crew. But I was like, mate, that's a cool crew to knock around with. Like, it's like, not only is like, everyone's got their things, like with Ollie, like he's going hard at High Rocks. Like Chris is going hard at the podcast. Like even like everyone's got their thing and they're going for it. And I think you might have already come to know it, or you might start to realize it when you get in Australia. There's a really great collaborative crew, whereas like often in Australia, potentially a little bit in the UK, where it's like there's that tall poppy syndrome. I know people
mention that.
People talk about it all the time, and I think being in the footy space, the rugby league space, that was so prominent. Like if you do anything outside of your little bubble of professional sport, it's like come back in, to the point of like boys getting a haircut and was like, oh fuck, it's sick fade, like like, you know what I mean, like taking the piss out of you. I get it, like it's humorous, it's fun, but then the Goldie crew, and maybe it's just the circles we're knocking around in, but it's super collaborative. It's just like, how can we help? Even like Chris, like who can we introduce you to? Or even like you're coming to Australia, like come meet this person. Like it's like, how do we help? Like we're in a group chat on the Goldie, and it's like just a variety of different personalities from like professional sporting crew, whether that's AFL and NRL, like probably the two big sports in Oz, restaurant owners, crew in fashion, and I guess like that kind of space, property owners. And then we've got like this group chat, which is essentially just a group of lads who is like, how do we help each other? Where it's like, if someone has a clothing brand, if like a clothing launch, then we'll all go to that. Or if I've got like a really big episode, then I'll put it in the chat and the boys blow it up with comments. And it's fucking awesome. And it's like, it takes it out. So that's why I'm so pumped for when you come over, because it's such an awesome crew and it's such a collaborative crew. It's like, how do we help? And that's like, that, if you want friends, like that's the circles you need to knock around in, hey?
Yeah, mate, I think it's people have that synergy as well of wanting to help each other, because I think especially when people get into, different spaces, whether it be podcast or personal training or whatever it may be, people view everybody else as the competition.
Yeah.
Because they don't realize how much clientele or listeners or however there is actually out there. And one of the ways that you can scale quickly is grow with people.
Yeah, man.
But people just aren't willing to sometimes do that.
It's like, I know Mr. Beast, like he talks about that all the time. Like when he was like a young kid and he had these 3 or 4 friends that he would just like sit online, like a Zoom or whatever, and they would just like build YouTube videos, and they grew so much more because they had, instead of one person making all the mistakes, they had 3 or 4 people making the mistakes, and then they would learn like 4 times as quickly, and you compound that over 10 years. Like, of course you're going to have success. Like you're just naturally going to have success.
Yeah, I think that is such a valid point. If you can take those mistakes and learn from, like, you're just skipping chapters through being vigilant. And that's the big thing about being around the right people, or even being around the wrong people. I've certainly learned a lot from being around the wrong people.
Yeah, what do you mean?
Like having those negative role models. So looking at traits of people and thinking, I really don't want that, or I really don't want that for my life. And looking at things that they've done to go down those paths and going, okay, I can kind of maybe sometimes see myself slipping down that slope, or seeing that snake out there, and making sure that I don't do those things. So I think there's a great thing from having positive role models, but there's certainly things you can learn from people who you don't want to be like as well.
Mate, before we get into the next chapter, I do have a little voice memo question from from one of our mates. Here we go.
Yo, Benji. I hope you're doing well, my friend. Chris Griffin here. My question for you today is, has there been any dark tunnels that you've entered where you couldn't see light at the end of the tunnel, but you made it out the other side? And if there was, what was the number one thing that helped you in those dark times? Keep crushing it, brother. I'll see you soon.
What a guy.
Deep thinker, our mate.
Love Chris.
Love Chris.
I'd probably have to refer back to the one which I've only just publicly spoke about on a reel the other day, and it leads back to men's mental health stuff. So it was, I found myself on one of the biggest bridges in the world, and I was kind of thinking, how have I got to this position? And I was contemplating jumping off it, and I ended up actually just taking a photo of the bridge instead of jumping off it. And it was probably the most pain I've ever been in my life without being in physical pain. And I just couldn't see any way back from it. Every single day I was in pain. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating properly. And I just thought it'd be way easier just to jump off a bridge instead. The way that I got out of it was by leaning on evidence from the past. I mean, one of the things I'll always lean on is when I did the world record attempt, is I did the carry and the walk, and I was like 9 hours in. I thought I can't do any more of it, like I'm done. But one of the things that kept in my head was like, I can always take one more step, no matter how hard it is. So I thought to myself, if I can just make it one more day, I'll just focus on that. I'll just focus on that one day, and then I'll just focus on the next day. Because when I tried to think about myself in a week's time, a month's time, I was like, there's no way I can continue to feel like this for another month because I just can't take it. But if I just thought about the 24 hours that I had in front of me, I was like, I'll do that. That I can manage. That small micro challenge, that small micro goal. And, you know, I think Peterson's talked about this quite a few times in terms of his clinical practices, where he's had people who are really down and they couldn't even clean their own room, which he says is a big start. So he'd have them clean a drawer. So I think if you can really focus on, even if it's the smallest thing, the smallest task, if you can do that and get a small win, it's really going to help. So I just focused on what I had in front of me, and that helped me start to get out of that dark tunnel. Because when you're in that dark place, you can't see anything else but darkness. And you've only got two options: is to pull up a chair and continue to sit in it and dwell in it. You start making those really uncomfortable decisions to move out from it, and it's going to feel so hard, and it's going to feel so horrible, and it's going to feel, every decision that you make is just so heavy on your shoulders. And they come in the form of conversations. They come in the form of doing the exact opposite to what you feel like doing. They come in the form of seeking support and seeking help. And I guess that's probably the darkest tunnel that I've sat in probably my whole life, but it's come in the last 6 months.
Bro, first of all, like, thanks so much for sharing, man. Like, I remember I saw the reel, it was like a week and a half ago. And I remember thinking, like, first of all, like, huge amount of respect, like, being able to talk about it to anyone, let alone publicly, is, it's wild. I get goosebumps thinking about it, because it's such a hard thing, like, when you're in it, and even just the way you articulate it, where it's just like, I can't see further, but that tip of, like, being able to take just one more step, cleaning out the drawer, having one more conversation, it's so hard. But it's so hard when you're in it, like, and you can't see anything past it. And I have had a conversation with a few friends who have been in similar situations, and it's like blurry. Like, it's almost just like, it's like you can't see the future, you can't see the next year ahead, let alone the next week, let alone the next day. But if you just hang on and just have those people around you, bro, I think it's so hard. What do you think were the key contributors that led you up to that time? Like, obviously it's been a tricky 6 months. What do you think things were?
The main thing was because I'd always been one of those people, because of business, who I was used to having control of everything. I was always thinking ahead. I always knew what my future was going to be. And when I came out of that relationship, because everything was tied to it, including business, podcast, everything that we did, it was all kind of just, ripped away, and you lose, I guess, a big form of your identity with that. And you lose your future, and that's why that blurry vision is. That's why you can't see anything else, is because you've invested everything to what you thought was going to be forever. I think that's one of the big things that I learned from it is nothing is forever. Like naturally we're going to die anyway, but nothing is forever. So I think I'm also now in a place where I'm appreciative of it. But I think the blurry thing's a big one. You can't see anything else.
Yeah.
You can't feel anything else apart from what you can feel in that moment. And that's why I guess I'm kind of thankful that it happened, because now I can use that to have more empathy with people that, you know, we both work with Movember, to be able to work with guys and be able to utilize that as a power and a tool for good is the thing that I will do now moving forward, which is why I wanted to speak about it last week, which is why I wanted to speak about it today, is because I know there's going to be many more guys who will be in that position.
That was probably one of my big questions, is like, why talk about it? Like, why put it out there for other people?
Yeah, I think when we were talking before about content, having depth, not width, is one of the biggest things. And when I put out that piece of content, I had so many guys just message me, and it gave me goosebumps. So I was like, and that's why when I come away from events like that, I feel so alive and I've got high energy, but I always also feel really down, because I then speak to people about their stories and about where they are or where they've been. I'm like, this is just so shit that there's so many guys who are going through this with no help, no support. They don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, man.
So it's always a mixed bag of emotions when I come away from the men's retreats or the events, because I'm so lit up by this great group of people who come together, but I also feel so down by how many guys are going through the same thing. So if I can share something which gives them something to relate to and know that there's hope, because I think hope's probably the biggest thing for all guys, if it can give them some hope. My big mission is simple: to stop young men dying early. So if I can do that by sharing something and being vulnerable, then so be it.
But that's what I think is like one of the biggest things that, to be honest, like isn't really spoken about a lot, is like the relationship piece with anxiety and depression and suicidal ideations, because like financial stress and relationships are two of the biggest contributors to male suicide from men 17 to 44, right? Like Movember came out with a really cool report at the end of last year, which was like talks about that in particular, but also around like Indigenous people and their depression rates as well. But I don't think we don't talk about it because like we're involving other people around it as well. Like you know, obviously you had the partner, you're married, and when we well, obviously we're cautious of that. We don't want to involve other people, but it's hard because even for me, like similar, like went through a relationship breakdown, and it was like to the point where it's like I didn't hear anyone else talking about that stuff. Behind closed doors, great, but people who we really looked up to and on social media, you don't talk about it because you're involving other people as well, which is hard. And so, yeah, that's why I think I got so much respect for you being open and talking about it, because you're still going through it. Like, and it's very rare for someone to be able to have that conversation while still going through it versus the person who's been through the really heavy thing but have gotten out the other side.
Yeah, I think there's a stat that men are 9 times more likely to commit suicide from breakups or from divorce. I don't know why that stat is. I guess probably because we suppress a lot of things and we're not as open about it. And yeah, I guess that's why I wanted to share that part of it as well. But it's been strange because it's something that I've never had to deal with before. And I guess that's why it's probably so hard for so many people, is because when you do commit to something, you commit to it and think it's going to be a forever thing. But that's why I said about nothing is forever, no matter what it is. But the thing that you can always take about it from it is the memories, because you're always going to be able to take those forward with you. And that is a big thing with the loneliness part, is that a strong friendship group is so vital when you're going through things like that. Like I spoke about Hunter, my friend, before, who checked in on me every day. There's 3 types of friends that you usually have in your life. I don't know if you've heard about this one before, but I love it. Is like some friends are like leaves. So they're in your life for a season. Yeah. And they may have impact or give you value in that period in time, but they're not supposed to be in your life forever. So they'll pass. Then you have friends who are like branches. They'll be in your life for a long period of time. They'll offer great value. They'll give you take homes. You'll be able to lean on them. They'll be able to lean on you because they're strong. But when that storm really kicks off, they may leave, or you may have to leave. And then you have friends who are like roots. They're in your life for life. And they're not bothered whether they're seen, because they might be friends or family like below the surface who will give you all the support and all the help and everything that you need, and they don't require any, validation for it. They're just there for you no matter what. I think it's important that during those periods of your life that you have friends that are roots, who are willing to stand with you in the dark, when it's rainy, when it's wet, when people turn their back on you, and they're willing just to hold your hand and be there for you.
But I love that. I know, and my first thought that comes to mind is like, how do we build the roots? Like we obviously like, and don't get me wrong, there's going to be leaves and there's going to be branches and there's going to be roots.
And there's nothing wrong with those. Like some people are supposed to be leaves.
That's what I mean, and that's fine. But you come to the lonely chapter, or being in lonely, like, I guess my question is like, how do we find those quality friends? Like, how do we find a good connection group?
I think that's the question that we're all trying to find, and it gets more and more difficult the older we get, because it's difficult to make friends when you're an adult. Like it's hard. It's difficult to approach people. It's not like when you're a kid in the playground, you go up and punch someone in the shoulder and you're like, yeah, we're gonna be friends for the rest of our life now. It's difficult because we all have set values and morals, and we have disagreements. So I think it's super difficult to do that. I think one of the biggest things that we can do is probably swallow our own ego.
Yeah.
And that's what I had to do when it came to Oz. Was I was in a new place on my own. I had to suck up my ego and just create a fresh version of me. But I guess that's a beautiful thing you can do as well. You can present yourself any way you like, as long as it's shown up with things that you believe.
Yeah.
And I guess like with anything that grows, you've got to be willing to nurture it and put value into it, water it, feed it, and allow it to grow. And also be willing to sometimes give sacrifice. I think, how many people are in your life that you are willing to sacrifice things for? I think that's probably a good question to ask yourself. Because if you're not willing to sacrifice things for people, are they really people who are roots in your life?
Yeah. I think one of the great things that I got out of that, and probably this conversation in general, is just like, when you show up as like an authentic person of yourself, you're going to attract those types of people, right? Like even the fact of like growing up and being an older man, like you said, it's harder to make friends, like, of course. But if you're doing things that align with your own values, like we talked about, being adventurous, so going outdoors, or going to the gym, and I know like gym and fitness and physical activity is a big one. If you're in the mental health space, leading into guys who are also around that space, like when you do stuff that are aligned with your own values, like you're going to end up finding people that you want to knock around with. You know what I mean? Like,
we spoke about this in the car. I think it goes back to, how do you find out what you want to want? Because we are always fed things from social media, society. These are the things that you should value, because what we want is based on our values. And I guess that you find out what you want to want by finding out who you are. Yeah. That's a deep question. Like, who are you? When you sit there and ask yourself that, like, who are you? What are you about? What do you value? Yeah. They're questions that are going to open you up and break you down. You have to rip yourself apart. You have to look inside the box that you've locked away. Yeah. And then once you've done that, you can find out what you want to want. And I think that's a big thing, because then you can then pursue those things. And then I guess the next thing on from that, which is still a question that I find quite difficult, is, do you want to be known for what you do or who you are? Because we all do something, we think that's what our identity is. Yeah. And that's a difficult thing, because then you lean into the things that you're doing. You're Keegan the podcaster, and sport, fitness, health. Like, they're things that you do, but it's not who you are. I guess that's part of your identity, but like, who you really are, what do you want to be loved for, really?
It's like that classic quote where people remember how they made you feel, but they don't remember what you did.
Exactly.
I remember hearing, I was like, that's it. Like, but that's it. It's like when you see someone, they fill you up with energy, or if you're doing something, and like we talked about before, like they light up when they talk about that one thing. I feel like that's when you know that you're aligned to your purpose and your values and who you want to knock around. It's like, I remember when I first started playing footy, I was like super quiet because I was around these guys who I looked up to. And then, and I was always thinking, I was like, oh, I wish I could be myself around them, because I feel like they would really like the person I usually am when I'm with like my mates that I've been around forever. And then probably since leaving footy, like I'm fully just like naturally like who I am, whether it's like, just knocking around and having fun. And then it's interesting because once you do that and people start commenting on it, like, oh, I love that about you, you sort of do it more, and then you become like more your authentic person. I think, I don't know, that's just my initial thoughts on it. I think that's
I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think that's a difficult thing as well, is because I guess that's why it's easy to feel lonely in a society where we're more connected than ever, because if you show up as someone else, you're never going to be loved for who you are. You're going to be loved for the person that you're showing up as, and that's not you. And that's why you can feel really lonely. And I really do understand, and I've seen it happen, is because, especially with social media, it's you can show up as an individual that gets a lot of attention and validation from showing up as somebody else who's not themselves, because you understand how the algorithm works and you understand what people are going to like.
Yeah.
And if you keep showing up as that individual, it's like showing up on a stage and playing a part. But then if the audience continues to clap all the time, what are you going to continue to do?
Yeah.
You're going to continue to show up as that actor, and eventually you become the actor and you lose the old you, and that's a really difficult thing to do.
That's such an interesting topic. That's such an interesting way to look at it. I don't usually like have questions like written down. Like I usually just have like little things. But there's one question that really stuck out to me recently. It was like, if you were to describe yourself, this is to you. If you were to describe yourself without mentioning your background, your hobbies, your occupation, your nationality, all these superficial things that we talk about that we attach to our identity, if you were to strip it back and if you were to describe yourself to me or to anyone, how would you describe yourself?
That's a really good question. And this is the thing, I think this is why I struggle with that question about what am I known for? Am I known for what I do or who I am? Is because I've been known for so long as a business owner, podcaster, fitness. I guess this is the thing I'm in the self-discovery phase of now, is finding out and answering that question.
Yeah.
Because as well as being those things, as well as being a coach, personal trainer, I am, an uncle, I'm a son, I'm a brother. I'm probably a figure to a lot of men who they feel they can have conversations with. But that's probably one of the sad things that I can't fully answer that question at the moment. I think that's one of the questions that I'm at the moment still trying to figure out myself, by finding out who I am and what I want to want.
Can I tell you what I think it could be?
Yeah.
I think you're genuine. I think I get really genuine vibes from you. I think there's I don't get bullshit. Like I feel like I can sense a good bullshit radar. that's through like footy or just knocking around a lot of crew. I feel like you're super genuine and you're super honest. Like what you're doing, you can tell that there is it comes from a really good place, and probably one of the main reasons why I wanted to have this conversation with you. Like obviously, like this is your hometown. Like we're in your we're in your backyard, which is great. But like I don't think I wouldn't have a conversation on this platform with people who I think is just taking the piss. So mate, and it's funny, man. Like I am conscious of time, and like I've mentioned it before. Like all your things about doing psychology, we didn't even touch on your world record carrying doing the longest farmers carry, which again is so impressive for Movember. Like there's just so many aspects of your story that I love the fact that you're open and honest. So mate, they're probably a couple of the big things.
I appreciate that, dude.
Yeah.
To flip the question around, how would you answer the question?
Good question, bro. Fuck, man, I didn't think.
That's the best thing to do when you don't know a question. Just deflect.
What do you think, mate? I don't know. I actually, when I did hear that question, I can't take credit for it. I heard it from a friend, and I thought that was just like such an interesting question because it's hard to answer, man. I think I kind of resort back to like my values, I guess, a little bit, and I think that comes from my family, my really close friends who I knock around with. I think I'm kind. Like I really care about my friends and my family. I want, like, the whole reason for everything I'm doing now is for them. Like the podcast, studying psychology, like even helping players transition. Like a lot of them are friends who I've knocked around with for years. So I think like probably like kindness and caring, I guess, is in there. I think being genuine, like the last sort of couple years since finishing footy, like I just feel like I'm the person who I'm supposed to be, and I'm in this like really cool like alignment with that. So being genuine and kind and probably like hardworking, maybe put hardworking in there. Like my family, like, and maybe that's a detriment. Like my sister calls me out on it a little bit, like where she's just like, oh, you don't spend enough time, and I do. Like I feel like I put as much time as I can, but there's some times where it's just like, oh, you're gonna like. She said this one thing. She's like, you're gonna fucking kill yourself if you keep going that way. And I was like, a part of me thinks that like this is like it's just a season for me. Like personally, I'm like, this is just a season where I'm at. Like I wanted to be doing this now, so I'm good. Like later on, and I can look after my family and everything like that. It's just a season, but I don't think they can quite understand that at the moment. So yeah, that's kind of like hardworking, probably genuine.
I can see the light in your eyes when you talk about the things about helping people and the November and the helping men, and you can see it's for genuine reasons. And you know, I've made a short, brief, but quite deep connection with you, and we were speaking before about how people speak about when you're not in the room, and you know, I would only have positive things from the things that I've learned about you so far to say, and I think that's probably just a testament to your character and the things that you're doing.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate that. I am conscious of time. What are you looking forward to? What are the big things that you're excited for?
And the things I can probably speak about at the moment is continuing to, with the question we talked about before in terms of like what I actually want to want, creating work-life balance. I think one of the big things that I lost in that period of coming out of the dark tunnel was I lost a little bit of, for the first time ever, motivation to work and show up and do things. So I'm just kind of building that back, but I also want to build the lifestyle balance because the last 3 years I've just been focused on business, and I want to do things where I'm going on an adventure again.
Yeah, bro.
I want to find the adventure, and like I think that's the thing that lights you up, and I think it's the thing that we lose, which again is why I guess I'm so obsessed with Disney and stuff, and I'm going next week is because it's a bit of escapism, but it's also a time that takes me back to when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Because as adults, we forget how to play. And I think one of the big things of the way that you learn is just through play, and that's one of the ways that we do build relationships and friends is going back to doing those things. Like that's how we build them when we're kids, and I think we can still do it as adults if we're willing to go out in the big playground.
Well, bro, I'm so pumped to have you over in Oz. Like, we got a couple more months. We're gonna have you over. We'll be training, getting the beach, camping. So, man, thank you again for your time. I know you're a busy guy and you got a heap going on. So, I'm grateful for your time. I'm grateful for you to be not only just open and honest on this conversation, but just the way you operate on social media and in your everyday life, man. So, thank you, bro.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. It's been a great experience.